In a previous video, I showed you the DAGL client demo where a fictitious company called DAX used the DAGL running right beside it as a self-hosted API to achieve triple entry accounting on the distributed ledger. What I'm going to show you now is how you would use the DAGL for your own applications. So what I'm going to do here is shut down the client demo, and we can put that away. We won't be using that anymore. And instead turn our attention to the DAGL. Now I'm going to shut this down as well, and I'm going to go to the folder that it was installed at. DAGL download, and in the DAGL publish folder. And I'm simply going to delete, or well, you can rename it in case you want to put it back for the demo again. But I'm going to just rename that guy store. And then I'm going to run the DAGL again, and it should create its own new store, but this time that store will be empty. And it'll do that the first time it needs it. So what we can do is come back to our browser, and this time we can go to DAGL itself. And because there was no store folder, notice how it's put back a store folder, but that store folder will now be empty. The store contains all of the journal entries that happen when you use the DAGL. The actual accounts, postable accounts, live on the Hedera distributed ledger, but the history of the transactions are recorded by the platform locally. So with an empty store, that's a signal to the DAGL software that it needs setting up for the first time. And we get this dialog, and this is where we can enter in various information needed by the DAGL to create a brand new instance for you. So let's create a description of the operator. I'll just call it my platform. And in a future version, you'll be able to specify the currency, US dollars, for example, and how many decimals. But for now, it's just tiny H bar with no decimal places will be used as the currency of the general ledger. Next, you need the chart of account template for both the operator and the member. Their set of books, their journal entries, will use a set of accounts. And the operator is similar, but different to the one that the member uses. So you can imagine being able to pick from a whole industry pre-created set of chart of accounts. This particular demo only has one right now. It's for a minimal two-sided digital marketplace where the users are buying and selling from one another. And we can look at that chart of accounts, and you can see it's really basic. It simply has a wallet for an asset. The only liability is due the owner. The revenue is earned transaction fees, and the expenses is DAGL transaction fees. So this is the chart of accounts for the operator. The only one available right at the moment for members looks a little different. It also has a wallet and due owner for liabilities, but it's got general sales and general purchases plus transaction fees as expenses. But it's, again, minimal. If you're an accountant or have been around financial reports and books in the past, you'll recognize this as a pretty standard chart of account, if not minimal. Next, we can set up the transaction fees. Anytime a postable transaction happens, there's an opportunity to charge fees. And the reason for that is because the distributed ledger network has costs associated with it. So we want to be able to potentially charge a certain amount of money or a certain percentage of the transaction back to the user in order to cover those costs as a payment for privilege to use the platform. There are 4 sets of fees that you can set, and the 5th one you don't get to set. The first one is the member cash-in fee. So when the member puts funds into the wallet, what percentage, in this case it's a 1% fee that the platform will take. Cashing out is also 1% in this case, but we can change it. We could change it to whatever we wanted. I'll just leave the defaults here. When you're buying something, the buyer will pay 10% of the transaction to the platform, and the seller will also pay 10% of the transaction to the platform. And the one that you don't get to change is the cash out fee, the operator cash out fee. So when the operator takes their funds, when they take all the funds they've earned and cashes that out, they're going to pay a fee to who? Well, to DAGL.org. That's the revenue model for DAGL. It simply takes a small percentage, in this case 10%, of all of the transaction fees that the platform itself earns. The next thing you need to do is place a crypto account. This is an actual Hedera crypto address, and we need that for the payer. This is the account that will pay all of the fees associated with the journal entry posts to these general ledgers. And so I'm going to stick one in there. It's going to need my public key and my private key. Let me get that. And this is the only place in the setup that you need to do anything that's crypto related. And then you click initialize. It says, are you sure? And it takes about a minute to set up the DAGL. And what's happening behind the scenes is a complete set of books for the operator being set up with all the chart of accounts required on the Hedera distributed ledger. And once it's done, click a button and you go immediately to the DAGL API. And your DAGL is now ready to go, and it exposes all of these APIs. So let's exercise the APIs. Let's see what we can do. Well, the first thing we're going to need, if you take a look sort of from here down, you look at all the APIs, they all require an access token. So you need an access token to call any of the APIs, whether they're gets or they're posts. And how do you get an access token? Well, there's a call here called get token, and you need to pass in the API key. Presumably in the production version of DAGL, you'd have to get an API key assigned to you, just like pretty much any other commercial API that's out there. So in our case, we can get the API key from the README that came in the original software download. So if I go into here and I get the README that comes with the download, you can get the API key here. It's the same for everybody for the demo, but obviously for the production version, each business would get their own API key. So you can drop that in there and say execute here, and it'll get you access token. And you can now use this access token for all your other calls. So we'll just grab that, put it in the buffer here, and let's see what we can do. Well, the first thing we have to do is associate one of your application's users with the DAGL in order to have a set of accounting books created for that user. So we're going to come down to the post section here and use the create member API. And we're going to try it out. And what we need is an access token and then a unique identifier for the user. So you would use unique ID as a string of your user. So in my case, I can just make one up. And let's say that's the unique string. And I'm going to hit execute. And that API will go away and create a set of accounts based on the member's chart of accounts that was configured during setup, and take those postable chart of accounts and go and create Hedera backing accounts on the distributed ledger. So here you can see that it responded with a 202. There's no data coming back. And what we can now do is, if we take our access token, we can continue to reuse that, and we can go and look at some of the reports. So for example, I might look at member trial balance. So we'll come up here. We'll put in the access token and with rod at rod.com and hit execute, and you'll get your trial balance coming back. And of course it's all zeros because no transactions have occurred. But all the accounts for that set of books for rod have been created. And of course all the reports will be there. They'll just all be zeros at the moment. So the next thing we need to do is we need to fund this account. So Rod needs to fund his account if he's going to be able to go shopping. We come down here and we're going to fund the account. This time we're going to use a different API. We're going to use the cash in member wallet hot. And the idea behind this one is this time we are going to provide crypto address as well as the private key here in the actual API call. So where the application that this DAGL is associated with is in fact a hot wallet which knows and manages the private keys of its users. So to handle that scenario, I'm going to try it out here, and I'm going to put in my access token, and my user is this guy. Request ID is optional, so we can take it out. And the amount we're going to fund it to, let's say 100,000 tiny H bar. We need an account here, so Rod's going to fund from his Hedera crypto account, and you need the private key. And we hit execute. And so we come back, we got a 202, so that's now been funded. Let's verify that. Grab our access token again. This time we'll go up and look for, let's say, member wallet balance. And you can see it's 99000. Of course, why isn't it the full 100,000? Well, that should probably be clear to you now. If we go up here and go to journal entries for the member, you can see the full journal entry. And don't forget that there's a transaction fee to pay. 1% of the fees goes to the My Platform for the privilege of using the platform. So now Rod's got money in his wallet. So let's go spend some of it. Let's do a transaction. We'll simulate a purchase between members. And that's going to be a post. It's going to be a post called synchronous member purchase. It's called synchronous because the transaction happens immediately. The exchange of funds happens immediately. This and creates suitable journal entries for that scenario. You could easily imagine a more sophisticated scenario where the transaction is for real goods as opposed to digital goods that can get released immediately on payment. But in the real world, you'd have an order placed, and that would create a journal entry that involves accounts payable. And then on the other side of the seller, there'd be an accounts receivable entry. And then at some point later, those products are shipped and then payments made. That would be an asynchronous exchange, but this is synchronous. So let's try it out. We need our access token. We don't need a request ID, it's optional. Well, the buyer's Rod, and well, we don't have a seller, so we can't actually do this one. So let's fix that. We need to go and create another member. So this time we'll create Bill at bill.com. And that comes back with a 202 indicating success. And so now let's try it out. Bill at bill.com, and we want to transfer 5,000 worth of value, simulating a purchase between the two, or perhaps a money transfer in a bank. Whatever the scenario that funds have to travel from one member to another, this is the API we would use. And now with that done, we can now take a look at audit journal entries for the entire platform. Notice there's no inputs, just the access token to get the set of journal entries there, where you can see that last one involved Bill, Rod, and the operator itself of the My Platform. All the transactions there. Notice that how the journal entries balance. And so that shows you how to seamlessly integrate the DAGL API into any application. It's really simple to use. And you'll note that as a general rule, there are no crypto concepts in the API's surface area at all. It's mainly member IDs, of course, the ubiquitous access token, and then, of course, which operation do you want to perform? Pretty much just which member and what do you want to do to them? You want to get their balance, all the reporting is done with gets, and of course, all the transactions done with posts. So hopefully that gives you a sense for how easy it is to integrate DAGL with any application looking to have triple entry accounting backed by a distributed ledger.